Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host, Maria Casillas. And we are going to be talking about something that was actually a question in one of the Facebook groups that we're in. And I actually think that this is a really important question. So listen up. But before we get to that, I want to just say thank you to all of the people who've been listening to the show and supporting us over the last several weeks and or months or even years. And if you're the type of person who listens to us every week, we especially want to say thank you to you. You guys are what we would call an every weeker. And it's because of you that we, continue to do this. You're kind of like the lifeblood of this show. So we just want to say thank you for that. And I actually talked to a person recently who told me, hey, dude, I've been listening to this show every day for the last several months. So I just thought that it'd be cool to give him a little bit of a shout out. So Hunter Lacoste, thanks for listening, man. And thanks for continuing to support us. And we hope that you get more value from this show and also the next show and the next show and the next show and the next show. So beyond that, if you haven't joined our Facebook group, you should, because it's a really cool place. It's growing. And you should take advantage of it too. Ask questions, introduce yourself. We are all there to support you and we're there to answer your questions. And who knows, it might even be a good question that might end up on this show. So a good place to get connected with us through that would be the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits on Facebook. So with that being said, Maria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm just going to add, if I may, to the last little plug that you gave there. Not just the Facebook group, but the events that we offer within that Facebook group and outside of it. Yesterday, I actually had the honor of being part of the meetup that we offer on a monthly basis. And it was so neat to see so many coaches there. Some of them who are avid listeners to the show, which is amazing. And some of them who've never heard of the show yet, but still knew that this was a really good place that they could come and just glean information and support and ask questions and share wins. And it was just, again, really, really neat. So just don't hesitate to join that group of people because they're out there and you do not have to go this alone. That's just what I wanted to add there. But I'm doing well, thank you. Appreciate you asking. Looking forward to finding out what question this is that we found in the Facebook groups.
Yeah. So I was just kind of scrolling through and I saw a question that I think is really important. And it's something that I've actually experienced quite a bit. And I know that, there's probably other coaches who have experienced this too. But the question was, how do we handle a situation to where a lead or a potential client asks you in advance how much you charge before you actually get on the phone with them, before you have the consultation, or even, I'll even just stretch this a little bit. How would you handle it when they ask that when you're on your consultation and you're not ready to share that quite yet as well? Because some people, I talk to people and they, after we do the rapport, they just get straight to it. Like, hey, tell me what you do and how you help people and what you charge. And I'm like, you want to know this right away, but I'm not going to tell you right away. So
yeah.
So that was the question.
I would guess that the answer to that is going to depend on which scenario they ask you in that, right? If they're asking you in the middle of your consultation, that's probably going to be a different response than if they ask you even before the consultation begins. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited to get into some of that. If I can, I think it would be very interesting to jump first into what's going on in our minds when somebody asks that question. Because I think sometimes let me ask you this, Cody. What is the typical answer that you think people might jump to? Like a novice coach or somebody who's just really kind of nervous about all that.
Yeah. I would say that there might be a few things that happen. Number one is they might just tell them, which is not a good idea.
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah. And then the other thing is they may even just avoid the question, and just say something else. kind of thing, which also is not a good idea because that seems like you're trying to hide something, you know? There might be another response. Maybe you have something in your head, but those are the two things that kind of come to my head.
No, those are the two things that I would say as well. And it's kind of why I want to say, just out of curiosity, what do you think is going on in people's heads? Why would they either, excuse me, completely ignore the question or just tell them right away and just almost even hope that it makes them not actually buy with you?
Mm-hmm.
I know maybe that sounds a little odd, but I bet that that's happening a lot of times because what's going on in our heads?
Oh, it's just fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what 90% of our problems are. It's just fear.
So fear of success, fear of not knowing what they're, going to do, fear of rejection, all of those things. And so it's like, if we're afraid of being rejected, we'll probably just ignore the question altogether. If we're afraid of success, we might just tell them, like, we might give them a number that is way high and almost expecting / hoping that they say, oh, no, never mind, I can't afford you. So I do think that that's correct, that there's a lot of fear around that. And so if we're going to come up with a really solid answer, then we're going to have to be able to combat some of that fear. And this feels like a little bit of the chicken and the egg, where it's like, well, can you come up with an answer that then combats the fear, or do you need to combat the fear first in order to come up with an answer? And I don't know that there's a solid answer to that, except that they're intertwined. And so I think if we can come up with a really good answer for that and practice it even, which sounds a little crazy, but practicing it out loud, I think that that's going to actually build our confidence, and we'll be able to say those things with more confidence in whenever setting they come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think that it's even important for us to kind of like ask ourselves, hold on. Can you pause it? Or no? And I think it's even important for us to understand like why it's not a good idea to share the investment before you actually get to making the pitch for the investment, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure you have thoughts on this too, but in my mind, it doesn't make sense to do it prematurely, because when you don't have that emotional buy-in from the prospect, when you're not able to really uncover like what's actually going on with their numbers, with the emotions around money for them, maybe they're a married couple and like the dynamic between the two of them, when you're not able to unpack those pain points and then also paint a picture of like, how things could be. So almost thinking about it as like the hell and the heaven. When you're not able to do that, there is no emotional buy-in to see the value of what you're actually providing for them, Mm-hmm. So, if you just give them the information up front, then all they're going to see, all they're going to hear, and all they're going to care about is the number.
That's right. The cost.
Right. Where we don't want them to worry about the number. We want them to worry about what they have going on, mm-hmm. and how it's affecting them and what they could have instead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we want them to do a cost benefit analysis, but we can't let them do that if they only have the cost. And that emotional buy-in that you're talking about is the benefit side mm-hmm. of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to hear how I would handle this?
I always want to hear how you'd handle it.
Okay. It's really simple. And honestly, I think that this episode is going to be kind of short because it's so simple, but we'll see. We'll see how it kind of goes. So when I've been met with this before, and this is before I hop on the phone with them, what I'll say to them is this. So they'll ask the question, how much do you charge? And I'll say, well, I don't really know quite yet. And to be honest with you, the reason I don't know is because I have different programs for different people with different situations and different needs. So in order for me to actually find that out, I would just need to learn a little bit more about you and like what you have actually going on and how things are affecting you. And then once I have a little bit more clarity on that, then, we can kind of talk through that. If it's something that you're even interested in. Because to be completely honest with you, I'm a big believer in just giving value and not expecting anything in return. So if that's all this is, that's fine. But, if you get the value and you're like, oh my gosh, this is such awesome value, I want more, then we can certainly talk about that.
Mm-hmm. So not only are you giving a really solid reason as to why you're going to hold off on telling them you are actually writing the script for the emotional buy-in for them when
Mm-hmm.
you do that.
Essentially, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. How have you handled it in the past?
Very
Something
similarly.
similar? Or
Yeah, very similarly. I think that for me, sometimes I also, when I first started, it was going into those first two scenarios that we talked about. I'd be lying if I said I didn't do that. Like my head would go into panic mode. like, what do I say to this? Especially like after prices were raised and that kind of thing. Or I would also, I've gone through this phase as well, where I would tell them while justifying the price. Does that make sense? Like,
it does, but tell me more.
well, just, kind of giving away the amount of time that they would be with, or what kinds of things that they would do while working with me, rather than really leaning into the emotional results that they're going to experience by working with me. And so, I think that's something that I had to work through in order to get to the spot where I felt confident and comfortable saying, very similar to what you say to people. It's just kind of putting it off for these specific reasons. And I actually just did a consultation, I don't know, a couple of days ago. It was. My days are so messed up right now. Like, I feel like every day is 5 days. So I think it was 2 days ago. But I got through this whole thing, and it got to the point where I was able to quote her the pricing, but I almost said, I think I did say, I don't think that you're ready for this. Like, she was working with another coach, and the stuff that she was doing with that coach was, I think, efficient and sufficient. And so I think that at this point it would have been stealing from her to bring her on as a client. And so I just kind of laid all that out for her. And at the end, she said, I will be in touch with you in the next 6 months because I want to get to the spot where I actually fire this other person so that I can hire you, which was, it was kind for her to say. But it wasn't the pricing at all. It was just her circumstances. So I think that's the other piece too that I just add in. And you actually kind of went there already. Just that idea that it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody's current state. And I want to make sure that we know before moving into this, if it's something that's going to be good for you and for the person, us, the coach who's actually providing that service as well.
And that goes back to, hey, I just want to help you, and if that's all this is, that's fine, because there are some people, and we talk about this in even recent episodes about like playing the long game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like sometimes you meet with someone for the first time and they're not ready, and it takes 6 months or 12 months for you to kind of just like be in touch with them, continue to support them, and then eventually they'll become a client. And maybe that would have never have happened if you just told them right out of the gate and they got scared by it. They would have never become a client, number one, but then also more importantly, like they wouldn't have had the opportunity to get this feedback and turn things around and get traction. And they likely would just be continuing to just kind of like waffle in their situation. So that's just like a doubling down with that kind of thing.
That's right. I also, just to throw this in there, it wasn't part of the topic, but I also asked permission to stay in contact with her. So I know that in my mind I'm playing that long game, but I wanted to get that permission from her because she has had an experience with people who are super quote unquote salesy, pushy, all of that stuff. And so I wanted to make sure that she understood that if and when I was going to be reaching out to her, it was not in that context, but rather to provide certain value from things I'm seeing. And of course she said, yeah, please keep in touch so that I have, I can make sure that I'm doing that and not just, pretending that I'm going to say no. So I think that's the other thing too, is when we do that, they know that we're serious about caring for them and that not caring for them, caring about them, and that we're going to continue to serve even though they're not technically a client. And that's probably why she said, I will be in touch with you within the next 6 months.
Yeah, super important to ask permission because like you mentioned, it comes off as not salesy, but instead it's like, hey, we talked about this and I'm still here. I didn't forget. Which does go a long way for a lot of people. So super important to do that.
Make sure it's sincere. Anything that we tell you here, don't just take it and try to script it and be like, well, they said if I do this, and make it sincere. That's important.
Yep. And there's one more wrinkle that I wanted to talk about, which is like, when people would ask this while you're on the consultation, but you're not ready to disclose that yet.
Okay.
So that's a different situation. It's actually very similar as to what I would say, but just a little bit different, right? So the previous one was, I need to figure out more about you, right? Well, maybe you found out about them and then they ask, kind of thing. So that whole argument is kind of off the table at this point, right? If you find yourself in this situation, I would take the approach of, yep, I hear you. I know you're super eager for that. And I promise you, we will get there if you really want to. But for me, on my end, that's not important to me right now. What is important to me is giving you some feedback. So I want to give you this feedback first. Make sure you get the value of, what you're trying to accomplish and why you're here. And then if after that, if you want to talk about it, I'd be more than happy to. But can I just please, serve you for a minute? And they'll be like, okay, yeah, sure. So that's how I would handle that situation.
Mm-hmm. I might also ask or reflect back to them that cost seems to be a very important factor to them. And I would do that in a way that helps me to, again, understand them. So not just the cost of this particular thing, but it is one of those driving factors for a lot of people. It's a hard way of finding out what kind of spending patterns they have and how do they buy things. I mean, it could be that they're doing it just for this, but chances are they also go on Amazon and they try to find the cheapest thing, regardless of what quality it was and that kind of thing. So it's not just to push back at them. It's actually to use that information to discover patterns in the way that they think and behave with money.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge statement right there. And I didn't really think about that, but it makes a lot of sense. So look at this. Look at this. We're bringing value to each other. Crazy. How much do you charge?
Not enough, dude. We got to up our prices real quick.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think that we're probably good for today. Short episode, but hopefully you got some value from it as a listener. And, next time that you get met with one of these questions, just kind of take this approach. See how it goes. And you never know. It might actually turn out in a really good way for you. So give it a shot next time someone does that, and let us know in our Facebook group.
Sounds good.
And
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you next week for another episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.